Death got you down? More specifically, does the death of someone important to you make you all sad and junk?
Yes.
Historically, we have dealt with the feelings of sadness and loss that accompany the permanent physical absence of a loved one by crying into a slice of cake, wearing jewelry made from the deceased's hair,
Ew.
or having the only picture of our loved one be taken post-mortem.
God, I'm not that old. The nerve.
Yep. What's more charming than posing Granny's corpse to emulate how she looked in life? Maybe we'll even paint eyes on her post-mortem picture to sell the illusion. And those were all just mourning practices from the Victorian era. But there's a new mourning kid on the block
Band name?
that the tech industry is happy to sell you for a modest fee, and it's one that comes with its own special term for the cognitive dissonance users can experience when interacting with it.
Ooh, cognitive dissonance is my middle name. Tell me more.
I'll tell you what you can expect should you decide to be pseudo-psychotherapied by a computer, dear listener, because we are talking about the intersection of artificial intelligence and personal grief on this episode of
Death Party!
Have you ever lost a loved one and thought to yourself, gee, even though my dearly departed's physical presence is no longer tangible, I'm not going to let that stop me from interacting with them?
Yes!
If only there was some highly unnatural way to stop the grieving process in its tracks and possibly even leave me in denial that my loved one has passed on, all while still sort of talking to them, but only via digital device.
No. That seems limiting. I like to wander around my kitchen, loudly conversing with the ghosts of my past loved ones. If I had to go get my reading glasses to text with them or something, that seems like way more work than just chatting into the ether like I've lost hold of my last marble. Plus, my way freaks out the neighbors.
Bonus. Well, what if I were to tell you that this deceased loved one's computer-generated vocal reconstruction was at least 65-ish% accurate to their actual living and breathing voice? In other words, it resembles your loved one's voice about as closely as spam resembles ham.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
I mean, I think it's best in scrambled eggs, personally, but it's definitely best enjoyed sparingly and infrequently.
No, the computer-generated voice. I suspect that I dislike spam, but I've never actually had it because of my suspicions. But if I were to actually give spam a chance, I would probably dislike it less than a 65-ish% accurate voice of my dead loved one. That places it squarely in the uncanniest of valleys.
Right. So that is a no then?
That is a no then.
That's probably overall for the best. But for the sake of this episode, let's say you said yes.
Oh, okay. Yes!
Instead of moving forward with the grieving process, you decide you'd rather fall into some kind of weird Twilight Zone-esque rabbit hole, wherein the classic stages of grief have the brakes firmly applied, maybe even reversed if you really want your mind f***ed up, jiggled around, chewed up, and spit out.
Sounds great. When do we start?
Thought you'd like that. Before we get into the unnatural convergence of the ancient natural grieving process and the modern tech industry, allow me to set the stage. It is 1966.
I think you went back too far. I don't know if there was a tech industry in 1966.
It's 1966 before the unnatural convergence of the natural grieving process and the tech industry.
Oh, okay. So you're like building the stage, and then you will set it after that. Should I make popcorn?
Yes. Look, sister, whether or not there's a tech industry in 1966 is immaterial. But there is technology, and people are using it, and they couldn't even use technology to talk to each other or pick up cheap shit their neighbors don't want anymore. They were still talking to each other in person and, like, using newspapers to buy other people's trash. Imagine.
What a hassle. Picking up cheap shit my neighbors don't want anymore is one of my favorite uses of technology. I just rehomed a giant bag of styrofoam blocks yesterday, and she's going to make Halloween props out of them.
Nice. To provide a bit of context for American technology in the 1960s, 1963 was the first year a direct messaging connection was established between the White House and the Kremlin. Can you believe it? Whereas now, in 2025, the sitting president is linked to the Kremlin through, emphasis on the sitting, is linked to the Kremlin through hefty unpaid loans and puppet strings. That direct messaging connection wasn't even a phone connection in the 60s, by the way. It was typed messages, kind of like an instant telegram, if I may.
So it was an instant message?
No, it was a message, but not really instant.
No.
It was like slow instant. What's the term for a slow instant message?
I think you're talking about just a message.
Oh, yeah, that. We have cute slang for instant messages now, like texting or IMing.
I don't know if we call it IMing anymore.
Well, my point is there's no slang for slow messaging. Needs a catchy portmanteau, like slinstinging.
Catchy.
It feels great saying it, too. Going back to 1966. By some accounts, the Link was considered the first personal computer, and it was initially used in a laboratory 4 years prior in 1962. Computers weren't exactly new technology in the 60s, at least not to nerds who are all nerdy about technology. But your average American would not have so much as encountered a computer in person, let alone had any idea of how to use one.
Or the space either. Weren't computers the size of an entire room back then?
Ah, right. Computers were massive and rare. The Link was cutting edge and by some accounts set the stage for the modern personal computer, so-called due to its intended use for a single researcher, and it was compact. Only the size of a refrigerator.
So portable and modern.
When the Link, that's L-I-N-C if you aren't a computer nerd, came onto the scene in the early 1960s, only 50 were made initially, and they cost the end user a cool... Wanna guess, Faye?
No idea. Their firstborn child?
A cool $43,000.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so in today's currency, that would be their firstborn, secondborn, and half of their thirdborn children?
Yeah, the New York Times article I got this from didn't specify whether that was in 1960s dollars or today dollars, but given that today the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour and has been for the past 16 years,
What the
an American making minimum wage today, right now, as we speak, in the year 2025, can earn about $15,000 a year, assuming they work 40 hours a week, all 52 weeks of the year. In other words, owning a computer in the 60s was very much cost prohibitive for individuals.
And the way this country is tanking, they will be cost prohibitive for individuals today too soon.
Oh, but don't worry, you're not going to get taxed on your tips. So you're going to be rolling in
Is
it.
that what they're saying now?
Other noteworthy things that happened in the 60s. By 1966, John F. Kennedy has been assassinated, possibly by his own government.
Probably. Allegedly.
Lawyers were not saying definitely. We didn't say definitely. President Lyndon Johnson has had U.S. troops, because Kennedy's dead. President Lyndon Johnson has had U.S. troops in Vietnam for the past couple of years, although dissenters, including high-profile ones such as Martin Luther King Jr., have publicly opposed the Vietnam War.
I'm starting to think this episode is about someone else ruining our lives and not AI.
A brand new science fiction television show by the name of Star Trek is blowing minds right out of their organic little skulls. Although we are a few years away from landing a human on the moon or sending the first ever email. Those last two events will occur just before the end of the decade in '69.
Oh, okay. And we're back.
Yes. Here we are, back to the topic at hand. Technology ruining our lives.
You say from our internet-based show, which many listeners are enjoying on their wallet-sized personal computers.
I meant socializing with the computer, replacing socializing with a person. That kind of technology is ruining our lives.
Wow, way to sound like an old fuddy-duddy. They said the same thing when the telephone was invented.
I will not be called a fuddy-duddy by someone who uses the term fuddy-duddy in casual conversation. Besides, they didn't say the telephone would ruin lives. They said the telephone would ruin good manners, and who gives a shit about those?
Sheesh, watch your manners, young lady. The invention of the telephone meant no more painstakingly handwritten calligraphy on fine linen-bonded paper imported from Paris. How was a lady of refinement supposed to spend her days if not using a quill and ink pot to laboriously craft handwritten invitations to social events?
And you just called me a fuddy-duddy.
Takes one to know one.
Fair enough. Anyway, we've gone too far back.
Are we still building the stage or are we setting it now?
Whew, impatient. At the point in time I'm talking about, the President of the United States has been able to almost, but not really, instantly message the Kremlin from the White House for the past 3 years. But computers were still so rare that in the 10 years between 1954 to 1964, the number of computers in the United States had grown from 15, that's 2 digits, to 17,000.
Dang, that's huge.
Well, with the U.S. population of 179 million at the time, that meant roughly 1 computer for every 10,500 people.
Oh, dang, that's not that huge.
And I did use a computer to do that math. And while the capabilities of the computer in 1966 were impressive, they of course paled in comparison to modern computing.
Yeah, I think they could only play Oregon Trail back then.
Damn, girl, way to date us. If anyone with the delicate flush of youth upon your cheeks is listening, we, like you, are totally young and hip. We are so super groovy.
Yeah, definitely nobody pale and frail and creaky over here. I think that was very convincing.
Yeah, definitely. Meanwhile, despite the limited computational powers of computers in the 1960s, an MIT professor by the name of Joseph Weizenbaum was able to develop an experimental computer program in 1966, which mimicked responses a psychotherapist might use in a professional session with their patient. The project, named ELIZA, made certain kinds of natural language conversation between man and computer possible, according to Weizenbaum. In today's terminology, we'd call ELIZA a chatbot, which is of course short for Chattanooga and botulism.
I always wondered what that stood for. Thanks for clearing that up.
Anytime. Weizenbaum's psychotherapy imitating program called Doctor rephrased user statements and turned them into predictable prompts a therapist might use, like, how does that make you feel? Why do you feel that way? Or how do you intend to pay for this appointment? Just kidding on that last one. Even though Weizenbaum's doctor prompts were basic and similar questions were reused to keep the conversation flowing, and even though people like Weizenbaum's own secretary were fully aware that they were engaging with a scripted computer program, Weizenbaum was stunned by the propensity of participants to confide deeply personal thoughts in the program as though it were a real therapist. In the words of Ewan Morrison in the Psychology Today article titled Escaping Grief with AI Surrogates.
Yeah, well, it's only a huge shock to people who can afford therapists. The rest of us have to confide in our pets, who put up with it while they're waiting for us to remember to feed them. At least computer programs don't gaze impatiently at their food bowl while you're crying to them about the day you've had.
This is true. In his book Computer Power and Human Reason, Weizenbaum wrote the following about his chatbot experiments. I was startled to see how quickly and how very deeply people conversing with a doctor became emotionally involved with a computer and how unequivocally they anthropomorphized it. Once my secretary, who had watched me work on the program for many months and therefore surely knew it to be merely a computer program, started conversing with it. After only a few interchanges with it, she asked me to leave the room. Another time, I suggested I might rig the system so that I could examine all conversations anyone had had with it, say, overnight. I was promptly bombarded with accusations that what I proposed amounted to spying on people's most intimate thoughts.
Yeah.
Clear evidence that people were conversing with the computer as if it were a person who could be appropriately and usefully addressed in intimate terms. I knew, of course, that people form all sorts of emotional bonds to machines, for example, to musical instruments, motorcycles, and cars. And I knew from long experience that the strong emotional ties many programmers have to their computers are often formed after only short exposures to their machines. What I had not realized is that extremely short exposures to a relatively simple computer program could induce powerful delusional thinking in quite normal people. This insight led me to attach new importance to questions of the relationship between the individual and the computer, and hence to resolve to think about them.
But using the computer to think through their emotions versus having this creep go through their chat logs are two totally different things. It doesn't necessarily mean they are feeling intimate about the computer or whatever. I could use a calculator to do my taxes, but that's not as weird as not wanting the guy who invented the calculator to go through my personal finances. I'm failing to see his point, and ultimately, I think he's just a big old creep.
It was the inclination of people to confide in Doctor that deeply troubled Weizenbaum, and it wasn't just the test subjects Weizenbaum was concerned about. Several practicing psychiatrists saw a lot of promise in Doctor as an automated form of psychotherapy. And because he was a human being with reasonable and demonstrable emotional capacity, Weizenbaum was horrified by the suggestion.
Wait, what the hell? But he created it.
Apparently it was not what he intended to do with it. The cognitive dissonance between knowing that one is interacting with a machine, yet still ascribing a human-like understanding to that machine, is what he was worried about, and it is now known as the Eliza effect. To reiterate, Weizenbaum's test subjects were easily fooled in the 60s with a simple text-based program, which often responded to human input by rephrasing what the person typed in the form of a question.
Were they fooled, or was his secretary bitching about him to his robot doctor and didn't want him seeing how much it bothered her to have to smell his post-lunch egg salad sandwich breath? Huh?
Well, I was not able to get an interview with her, so I will just have to surmise. I mentioned the Twilight Zone earlier, but it would be more accurate to reference Black Mirror, because an episode from 2013 depicted with unnerving accuracy what I'm about to talk about next.
Well, that's probably where they got the idea in the first place. Every time they put out a movie being like, ooh, be careful, or this could happen to you, some ass is like, or what if I made a bunch of money doing exactly that, and then everyone just lives in a freaky hellscape forever. I don't know if you've noticed, but have you heard about our presidency? Idiocracy called this in 2006. They put the entire cast in Crocs because they were the stupidest shoes they could find, and now everyone is just wearing them like it wasn't a movie about stupid people. No, everyone thought it was like instructions. It's so upsetting. Not the Crocs, the presidency.
Yeah, I hear you what you're saying. Yes, your feelings are valid. For the record, I find Crocs to be somewhat upsetting as well. Although kind of a necessary evil in the food service industry. Not saying I accept them. I've gotten a little more used to them. But they are not nearly as upsetting as the current federal administration. But that's a rabbit hole we could fall into and never come back up from.
Yep.
Even if we tried desperately to claw our way out.
Yep.
Because there seems to be no bottom. It just keeps moving lower and lower.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't heard, dear listener, the guy somehow holding the highest office in the nation has just deployed our American National Guard to our American city. Because there are a few dozen protesters here in Portland, Oregon, who have been causing a bit of a stir at the local ICE, that's Immigrations and Customs Enforcement if you're across the pond, building here in Portland. And by causing a stir, I mean irritating ICE agents.
Yeah. They are dancing in onesies. It's war!
One of them's in a chicken costume. Oh no!
But at least the National Guard has never straight up murdered American citizens on American soil for protesting something the government was,
I can't state. Yeah. At least this time we're not also fighting a very unpopular war overseas.
Sorry, babes. This is how AI is ruining our lives, I think.
Yeah, and yet so hard to not mention politics when the administration in the country's seat of power is sending its own military to terrorize unarmed civilians who are protesting and exercising their right to free speech.
And inflatable chicken costumes.
I hope another naked lady shows up to confuse the shit out of the troops again. On with the show?
Sure, lay it on me. How are our lives about to get so much worse?
That's the spirit. Political rants can be a real rabbit hole. And speaking of rabbit holes, getting back to Black Mirror. In the episode titled Be Right Back, a woman loses her partner and eventually deals with the grieving process by letting a tech company use data the deceased partner shared online while he was alive, social media posts and the like, to create an android version of him so she can interact with and perhaps even know in the biblical sense. The android has the deceased partner's personality, acts like him, talks like him, and can even participate in that downhill cheese rolling competition in England.
Huh? Is that a euphemism?
Sorry, just wanted to make sure you were still awake. And also, get feelers for my spec script on an episode of Black Mirror centered around that downhill cheese rolling competition in England.
I like it. Has this been on your mind lately?
The winner keeps the cheese, Faye. It's always on my mind. 7 whole pounds of cheese. That's at least 2 weeks worth of cheese.
Enough cheese to get you through your hospital stay after you go ass over tea kettle down a mountainside trying to outrun a giant wheel of cheese.
But a trip to another country where they have universal health care and roll free cheese around for the taking.
You seem kind of worked up. Do you need a minute?
That's probably not a bad idea. Oh, whew. You were right. Laboriously writing handwritten invitations with a quill on monogram stationery is relaxing.
Were they invitations to visit you in the hospital after tumbling down the steep-ass cheese wheel hill?
Maybe. You know how I like to plan ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And also lose sleep over worst-case scenario outcomes that never come to fruition.
Same! Love that for us.
Ooh, yes. Where was I? Okay. Lady commissions android a dead romantic partner to use her grief. Maybe they Right. Okay. Since this is a Black Mirror episode, of course it's freaky as all get out and doesn't have a super happy fairy tale ending.
It's funny how we call it a fairy tale ending when original fairy tales didn't have fairy tale endings.
Mm-hmm. Although the Black Mirror episode originally aired in 2013, some of the technology that was a twinkle in its eye then is available right now. Behold!
What's that? What? Are you holding a little piece of air?
Wrong! I'm holding ideas. You just can't see them.
Oh, I see. I mean, I don't see, but conceptually, I do see.
Yeah.
I think. Wait. No, I'm still confused.
No, you totally see. We have made it full circle, my friend, because all of that computer history and cultural context I just provided leads us to this precarious precipice we are now primly perched upon.
The stage is built. We can now set it. Or is it set? It's a conceptual stage, so I can't tell.
It's an idea stage. Yeah. The tech industry has begun to offer not just chatbots, but a video simulation of your dearly departed, complete with a 70-ish% accurate recreation of their voice.
The spam to ham ratio.
Yes, abominations such as these are known as grief bots or dead bots because, creativity had to take a backseat.
Deadbots? Okay. I co-host a podcast about death. Maybe you've heard about it. And even I think that's f***ing insanity.
I know, right? Artificial intelligence services for love, grief, and mental health are no longer Joseph Weizenbaum's professional mid-century nightmare, but our daily waking fever dream.
Great.
We even have a term for this phenomena because capitalists got to market a thing before they can sell it to you. Grief bots are part of the, prepare to puke, digital afterlife industry.
This is going to give me a f***ing heart attack. Don't you dare make a robot out of my carcass when I die.
Oh, but who will serve me tea when you're gone? Okay, fine. I don't mean to sound like I'm poo-pooing all applications of AI. It's certainly not going anywhere anytime soon, and there's no point in trying to engage the brakes on a train that's jumped the track.
Boop.
Actually, in a study published in January 2025, a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto found that a generative AI chatbot's responses were, get this, preferred and rated as more compassionate than those of expert crisis responders.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as horrific as all of this sounds, AI has given me better medical advice than any human I have ever paid. So, I don't know. I definitely wouldn't want it to make some horrific 70-ish% melting candle-faced versions of my dead parents. But if it tells me to go easy on myself because I'm just doing my best, I will absolutely cry out of gratitude.
As always, an abundance of caution is advised by experts should you decide to interact with AI that has been designed to perform a social function. In Escaping Grief with AI Surrogates, Morrison warns, AI grief bots may trap users in the stage of denial, impeding the flow of the 5 natural stages of mourning. AI relationships offer the illusion of connection while eroding real-world bonds. And wouldn't it have been great if we'd already done an episode on the stages of grief, so dear listener would have a reference point there.
No, I'm busy talking about ghosts.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it, but suffice to say that there are more stages of grief after denial, which has classically been considered the first stage.
Right.
Now let's say I've convinced you to keep your sweet, ever-loving distance from an artificially intelligent grief bot.
You had me at 65-ish% accurate.
Yeah.
In American schools, that's a D. And I think that's probably even being kind because Americans aren't known to be the brightest bulbs on the planet.
Good thing, because do you know what one company is charging just to reproduce your loved one's voice using AI?
I am so horrified at the thought of these companies holding people's fake 65-ish% accurate dead loved ones hostage once they've signed themselves up that my brain has turned off and I can't even fathom a number.
Fair enough. I will just tell you then that it is $15,000. That is 1,530 dollars. If that number is ringing any bells for you, that's because earlier in this episode I mentioned that it is the amount that an American making minimum wage today, right now, as we speak, in the year 2025 can earn in a year, assuming they work 40 hours a week, all 52 weeks of the year. But hey, if you can't scrape together that kind of cheddar, oh, cheddar.
Mind off the giant cheese wheel, sister. We've got a show to finish here.
Right. If the AI voice creation fee of $15,000 is cost prohibitive for you, or, you're morally opposed to spending a poverty-stricken full-time working American's entire yearly salary on chatting up a computer that's been programmed to sound like your dead great-great-aunt.
Or 65-ish% of her anyways.
Yeah. AI offers other, less invasive, and more affordable ways to unnaturally grieve. I know I'm going to regret telling you this, but at least one company offers fictionalized seances.
What? Oh my god. I'm so mad I didn't come up with that first. Sign me up. Where did I put my bank account? I wouldn't even want to summon my 65-ish% fake family members, though. Could I request someone else? Like Harry Houdini? Ooh. I bet that would make his ghost so irate that he would actually appear and break the AI algorithm out of spite.
Yeah. I don't know if everyone listening to this knows this, but Harry Houdini, in addition to being an amazing magician, was also famously into exposing.
He was so mad.
Exposing seance fakers.
Spiritualists.
Yes. He was very into showing all the little tricks that they would do to convince people that seances were real. Yeah, he was really into exposing the fraudsters who were not real psychics.
Because he was mad.
Actually communing with the dead.
He went to a seance and they said they would like bring over his mom, and then they said all this shit that she never would have said, and he was like, it will be my like I'll die on this hill to prove all you people.
And he did so many, he exposed so many fakers. He made it like his life's work, and also the magicianing. But this
and also that
2 life's works. He was very busy, and he actually died pretty young, so it's pretty amazing. But
yeah,
one estimate in Morrison's article quotes a cost of $39 a month for AI therapists. And, again, if you're listening across the pond or any other country, especially one with a civilized healthcare system, or you're listening in the distant future and need a reference point, it's pretty typical for a single session with a therapist to cost more than $39. And that's assuming you have insurance.
Yeah, if you're blessed to not live in this dumpster fire of a country, therapists are currently often between $100 and $200 for an hour or less if you don't have insurance. And some of them don't accept insurance anyway.
Yep.
So I get that all of us need better medical care, but at least you don't live in a third world shithole country like America. That's too bad, because I was going to say that if only insanely rich people can afford it, it will at least keep most people safe, if only because they can't afford to spend that kind of money on it. But as usual, no one is safe. No one is ever safe.
And we're getting unsafer. The faster technology evolves because humans can only move so fast. But computers are another story. We already mentioned ethical concerns that arose in Weizenbaum's day in the mid-century, so you can imagine that as the technology has advanced over the years and become more accessible, more ethical questions have come to the fore. For instance, people who consent to have a grief bot of themselves created before they depart this mortal coil are unable to consent in perpetuity. In Grief Bots, Blurring the Reality of Death and the Illusion of Life, Natasha Fernandez notes, consent provided before death cannot account for unforeseen uses or misuse of the technology. How informed can consent truly be when the long-term implications and potential misuse of the technology are not fully understood when consent is given? Someone agreeing to create a grief bot may envision it as a comforting tool for loved ones, yet they cannot anticipate future technological advances that could repurpose their digital likeness in ways they never intended. At this point, there have been a few studies and early empirical work on what happens when people use AI to replicate loved ones who have died, but it's a very new area with a lot of open questions and ethical complexity, and I bet you're just chomping at the bit to hear all about that. But
too bad!
Guess what? This is plenty long enough, all right? Don't be greedy. We're just going to have to turn it into a second episode.
Learn some patience, why don't you?
Yes. Exercise in very human concept of patience.
I don't know if anybody has that anymore.
They know, because all the short-term digital dopamine hits have blasted it out of our organic little skulls.
If you like us, if we haven't traumatized you yet, if you want more of our bizarre dad joke brand of whatever this is, then help us help you get more of what you want by giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps weirdos like you find us. We have a Facebook page, and we're on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok if you want to see our amazing cover art. We try and make one for every episode.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yeah.
Can we just end it like that?
Yeah.
I feel like that's great.
That's good enough for the likes of you.
That you have everything you need to know. There's gonna be more. Look, if you like closure, guess what? You're gonna get it. Just not right now. Chill out.